There is a gardening technique so effective it can triple your harvest with almost no work. It has been dismissed, mocked, and even regulated against for decades. Not because it does not work, but because it challenges everything industrial agriculture depends on. Urban gardeners have been cited for using this method in their own yards. The USDA has actual regulations restricting it on federal lands. And yet, the science proves it works better than nearly anything else you could do for your soil. So why have you never heard of it? Why is this not taught in every gardening class and agricultural program in the country? The answer reveals something deeply uncomfortable about how we have been conditioned to garden, and more importantly, who profits when we continue doing it the hard way. What you are about to learn might completely change how you think about growing food. What I'm talking about is deep organic mulching, and once you understand it, you'll wonder why you ever did anything else. The concept is almost embarrassingly simple. You take organic material like hay, straw, wood chips, or leaves, and you pile it thick on the surface of your soil. Not a thin decorative layer. We're talking 6 to 20 inches of organic material applied directly on top of the ground. You don't till it in. You don't dig it under. You just let it sit there and do what nature has done for millions of years on every forest floor on the planet. Two pioneers perfected this approach over the past century, and their stories are remarkable. Ruth Stout was born in 1884 and became known as the Mulch Queen. Starting in the 1930s, she developed a method using spoiled hay that farmers could not sell to livestock. She gardened this way for decades in Connecticut, writing books and giving lectures about how she had eliminated nearly all the backbreaking work that gardening supposedly required. She stopped plowing entirely. She stopped weeding. She stopped most of the labor that makes gardening feel like a second job. And her gardens thrived year after year, while she watched her neighbors exhaust themselves doing things the conventional way. Then there is Paul Gauci, who created what he calls the Back to Eden method using free arborist wood chips. His documentary has been viewed millions of times, and his garden in Washington state has become a pilgrimage site for gardeners who cannot believe what they are seeing. Trees that should not grow in his climate are thriving. His soil, which started as hard clay, is now dark, rich, and teeming with life. Both approaches are no-till and no-dig and require minimal labor once established. They mimic the natural conditions found on a forest floor, where organic matter continuously falls, decomposes, and feeds the soil without anyone ever touching a rototiller. So why do I call this forbidden? Because this method contradicts virtually everything conventional gardening advice has taught for generations. Think about what you have been told good gardening looks like. Neat rows, freshly tilled soil, bare ground between plants, a garden that looks orderly and controlled. Deep mulching throws all of that out the window. Some homeowner associations and municipalities have aesthetic rules against what they consider messy-looking gardens. People have received actual citations for having too much organic material in their yards. In Toledo, Ohio, urban farmers faced disputes over mulch piles that required city negotiations to resolve. USDA prohibits the use of non-certified weed-free hay and straw on national forest lands. For decades, a myth called nitrogen robbery scared gardeners away from using wood chips anywhere near their plants. And perhaps most damaging of all, the method looks primitive compared to the neat rows and freshly tilled soil that magazines and garden centers have trained us to admire. But here's where it really gets interesting. When you look at the actual peer-reviewed science, everything these pioneers claimed turns out to be true. Let's start with moisture retention, which alone can transform your gardening experience. A comprehensive meta-analysis examining 74 studies with over 300 yield observations found that mulching increases crop yields by up to 60%. One of the primary mechanisms is simple. Mulching conserves moisture by reducing evaporation from bare soil. Studies show it reduces irrigation needs by 14 to 70%, depending on the crop. Ruth Stout famously grew potatoes in Connecticut summers without any irrigation whatsoever. Water that would evaporate in hours from bare soil stays available to plant roots for days under a thick layer of mulch. Temperature regulation is another massive benefit that conventional gardening completely ignores. Research has shown that organic mulching can lower soil temperatures by more than 10 degrees Celsius during hot periods. That layer of organic material acts as insulation, keeping soil cooler in summer and warmer in winter. Modern agronomists have found that deep hay mulch keeps soil temperatures near 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which happens to be optimal for crops like potatoes, while bare soil can swing 30 degrees in a single day. Mulched soil remains remarkably stable. Your plants aren't constantly stressed by temperature extremes, and that translates directly into better growth and higher yields. Perhaps the most profound effect happens below the surface, where deep mulching triggers an explosion in soil biology. This is something that conventional agriculture almost completely ignores, but it might be the most important factor of all. Organic mulching dramatically increases beneficial fungi that degrade lignin and solubilize phosphorus, making nutrients available to your plants that would otherwise be locked up in the soil. Earthworm populations multiply dramatically under mulch layers, sometimes increasing by a factor of 10 or more. These creatures aerate the soil and deposit nutrient-rich castings throughout the root zone, essentially doing the work of a rototiller without any of the damage that comes from mechanically destroying soil structure. A meta-analysis of 56 studies confirmed that organic practices significantly enhance soil microbial abundance. Gardeners who have adopted these methods report that one season of deep mulch creates more biological activity than years of conventional tilling ever could. It gets repeated in gardening books and extension service publications. And when wood chips are tilled into soil, it is actually true. But here is what they never told you. When wood chips are used as surface mulch and not incorporated into the soil, they do not steal nitrogen from your plants. Laboratory research has demonstrated this repeatedly since the 1990s. University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources found that mulch actually increases soil nitrogen over time as it slowly decomposes. The thin interface where mulch meets soil creates a zone that actually suppresses weed germination. Meanwhile, established plant roots below remain completely unaffected. Keep the mulch on top and never till it into the soil. The real-world yield results from these methods are absolutely staggering, and they have been documented by countless gardeners who decided to try what the experts dismissed. In 2021, a backyard trial using the Ruth Stout method harvested over 130 pounds of potatoes from a modest plot. Extraction was easier than conventional methods because the potatoes sat right on the soil surface under the hay, requiring no digging whatsoever. During hot, dry conditions, mulched tomato plots showed yields 67.6% higher than bare soil controls. Ruth Stout herself documented sustained potato yields of 50 to 60 bushels per 1,000 square feet, maintaining this production for decades without ever buying fertilizer or irrigation equipment. If you want to try the Ruth Stout method, here's what you need to know. Add 6 to 8 inches of mulch as a minimum for your first application. Ruth herself recommended starting with a 20-inch thick layer because it compacts significantly over time. Use spoiled hay that farmers cannot sell to livestock. This material is often free or available for just the cost of hauling it away. Replenish the layer each year as it decomposes into the soil. That decomposition is actually the magic, as all that organic matter transforms into the rich, living soil your plants crave. For the back-to-Eden approach, Paul Gauci adds about 2 inches of wood chips every 2 years. Fall is the best time to apply, mimicking when leaves naturally fall in the forest. You can get free wood chips from arborists through services like Chip Drop, who are often happy to dump loads for free rather than paying disposal fees. Just avoid allelopathic trees like black walnut and eucalyptus, which contain chemicals that can significantly inhibit other plant growth and cause real problems in your garden. I want to be completely honest about the drawbacks because this isn't a magic solution without any challenges, and anyone who tells you otherwise isn't being straight with you. Slugs and snails absolutely thrive in hay mulch environments, which can be problematic for certain crops like lettuce and strawberries. Voles and mice can tunnel underneath the layers. In particularly wet years, potato sets under deep mulch can rot before they get a chance to sprout. The system takes 1 to 3 years to fully establish, and your results during that transition period may be underwhelming. Climate matters too, since Paul Gauci gardens in the rainy Pacific Northwest, and his specific approach may need modification in different regions. And practically speaking, you need access to large quantities of material to get started, which isn't always easy in urban environments. But the real question still remains. Why isn't this taught in schools, in gardening classes, in agricultural extension programs? Deep mulching directly threatens industries worth hundreds of billions of dollars. The global synthetic fertilizer market alone is worth over $200 billion annually. Add in pesticides, herbicides, and tilling equipment, and you're looking at an agricultural industrial complex that depends on gardeners and farmers buying inputs year after year. Every person who discovers they can grow abundant food without those inputs represents revenue lost. Universities have historically focused their agricultural research on large-scale conventional methods that benefit corporate sponsors. The method requires patience, with the best results taking 2 to 3 years to manifest, which doesn't fit our instant gratification culture. And frankly, deep mulch looks messy compared to the manicured gardens featured in magazines and home improvement shows. In the 1950s, the plow was considered sacred, and nitrogen fertilizer was mandatory. Anyone who suggested otherwise was dismissed as a crank. Here is the truth. The gardening industry does not want you to understand. This method is not illegal. It is simply unconventional. The peer-reviewed science supports virtually every claim made by its pioneers. The reason you have not heard about it is not because it does not work. It is because it works too well, too cheaply, and with very little ongoing expense. There is no profit in telling people to pile free hay on their gardens and let nature do the rest. There is no money in teaching methods that eliminate the need for fertilizers, pesticides, and expensive equipment. Give your garden a thick blanket of organic material. Let earthworms, fungi, and bacteria do the work that tractors and chemicals never could. Watch as your soil transforms from lifeless dirt into something dark, rich, and alive. Some solutions are too cheap to profit from. Some knowledge threatens industries worth billions. And some techniques refuse to stay buried, no matter how hard the establishment tries to ignore them. The forest floor has been demonstrating the perfect gardening method for millions of years. Maybe it is time we finally paid attention. Maybe it is time to stop fighting nature and start working with it.